Welcome back to another comparison video, where today we're going to compare the RTX 4090 against my RX 7900 XTX in the First Descendant, a newly released Unreal Engine 5 game that's quite popular. For now, target resolution will be 4K, and we'll look at two different scenarios, the open world and a solo dungeon, and we'll look at a few different settings. Maxed out ray tracing off, DLSS, FSR, you know the drill. So without further ado, let's jump straight into the open world. Onto the settings then, we're gonna begin with 4K, ray tracing set to ultra, no upscaling of any kind, and all the rest of the graphical settings are set to ultra. So this is as maxed out as it goes with this game. And we're gonna make a lap around this map and come back to base. And then we're gonna compare averages and 1% lows. As far as I'm aware, and I could be wrong about this, the game uses lumen lighting, and for ray tracing it uses RTX AO, ambient occlusion, and RTX DI, direct illumination. Both of these are Nvidia technologies, and I believe this is an Nvidia partnered game. You can kind of see that on the advantage that the Nvidia GPU has, which is quite a lot with ray tracing enabled. This results on a 93% lead for FPS averages, with 52 FPS versus 27 FPS on the XTX, and over twice as fast on the 1% lows, with 40 FPS versus 18 FPS on the XTX. But what if we turned ray tracing off? How do they compare? That's what we're going to do here. We're just going to turn ray tracing off, keep everything else to ultra, no upscaling, and this time we have the 7900 XTX catching up quite a bit. We have 62 FPS averages on the 4090 versus 52 FPS averages on the XTX. This results in a 20% lead for the 4090. And for 1% lows, we have 50 FPS on the 4090 versus 40 FPS on the 7900 XTX for a 25% lead on the 4090. That's quite the catch-up. But before we resort to upscaling, because I don't think in this game it's actually very good, we can try lowering the preset from ultra to high, and we should be able to gain a bit more performance on both sides. There is no graphical preset setting, unfortunately, so you have to lower everything manually one by one. But if we drop from ultra to high, we have the 7900 XTX practically matching the 4090 in this particular scenario. I mean, 4090 is ahead by a couple FPS, but I consider that to be a tie. It's within margin of error stuff. And if I was using an XTX to play this game at 4K, this is probably how I would play it, because I would want to be above 60 FPS consistently, and unfortunately FSR does not look very good in this game. It's a bit too soft for my liking, even at 4K with FSR quality, as you're gonna see in a second, but yeah, that's what I would personally do. But anyway, let's go ahead and drop DLSS quality and FSR quality and see if we can reach the hundreds. We're going to keep every setting as it was. The high graphical preset, ray tracing off. We're just turning on DLSS quality and FSR quality. And that is enough to actually get us close to 100 FPS averages. We have 106 FPS on the 4090 versus 98 FPS on the XTX, which is a lead for the 4090 by just 8%. And then for 1% lows, we have 85 FPS on the 4090 versus 78 FPS on the XTX for a lead of 9% for the 4090. But as you can see, FSR does not look very good in this particular game, and I don't know, but it's like I'm kind of starting to see a trend with Unreal Engine 5 games. It can be hit or miss with how well FSR is implemented, unfortunately. As far as DLSS, I think it looks actually pretty good. It's a bit softer maybe than native, but overall I would say it definitely looks much cleaner and sharper. That's going to be it for the open world. Let's go ahead and jump in a solo dungeon, and we should be able to actually get higher FPS than we are out in the open world. Makes sense. Before we begin this dungeon though, I wanted to throw ray tracing back to ultra. We'll keep DLSS and FSR to quality and the graphical preset on high. And like I said, these dungeons are definitely less demanding than the open world. It kind of makes sense. And this time we're able to get close to 60-ish with the 7900 XTX with 46 FPS for averages. On the 4090 we have 82 FPS for averages. That's a lead of 80% for the 4090 on the averages. And for 1% lows we have 31 FPS on the XTX and 64 FPS on the 4090, which leads to about a little over twice as fast on the 1% lows for the RTX 4090. Ideally, I would have liked to have done this with a group of 4 people, but I can't really replicate these tests with people. So I guess this is going to have to do. But I think we get a pretty good idea. It's kind of what we saw with the very beginning of this video where we had 4K and ray tracing on Ultra. The Nvidia GPU definitely pulls ahead with ray tracing in this game. But what if we were to turn off ray tracing? Well, that's what we're going to do and see how they compare. Let's go ahead and turn ray tracing off. We're going to keep DLSS and FSR to quality. All graphical settings are going to stay on high. And this time we have some very interesting results. When it comes to averages, they're pretty much both tied. When it comes to 1% lows though, the XTX is actually ahead this time. We have 85 FPS for 1% lows on the 7900 XTX and 76 FPS for 1% lows on the RTX 4090. That's a lead of 12% for the 7900 XTX, and the averages are a tie. Now that's going to be it for this video. I'm not going to really focus on image quality too much. The whole FSR being soft is something that I noticed just by doing this video, but there is actually XeSS in the game and TSR, and I've heard from some people that comment in my comment section saying that XeSS did quite a bit better job than FSR. So if you think that's a bit soft for you, you can try XeSS or TSR perhaps. But other than that, I think the game's actually kind of fun. The shooting feels good. It's fairly well optimized. I mean, the 1% lows are pretty good. You do get some traversal stutters here and there, which are rather common with Unreal Engine 5 games, unfortunately. That's still a thing. And I've heard some people say that the monetization is a bit aggressive, although it is only cosmetic, but not surprising for a Korean MMO. But personally, just playing it here and there, I'm enjoying it. It's kind of fun. It feels good to play, and that's kind of what matters. But that'll be it for this video, guys. If you did like it, give it a like. It would help me out, and consider subscribing if you want to see more content like this. If you're curious about frame generation, I did look at it on my previous First Descendant video I did on the 4090 ultra wide. It's actually pretty good. But yeah, that'll be it. Thanks for watching. Peace.